All right, well, thank you for joining. This is my first time talking publicly about ADHD and its medications, what I thought would be offline, and nobody's here. So I've set up my camera, and I'm going to do the talk that I prepared anyways. It's a little loose. I was kind of hoping that what I've put together here would be jumping off points for group dialogue amongst parents who are concerned about medicating their children for ADHD and in general people who want to know more about ADHD and alternatives to medications. It's a little rough. I did make it today. I've been very busy. Let's do this. So, a chat about ADHD and its medications. I'm not a medical professional. The points I am here to make are anecdotal. Choices surrounding ADHD medications are highly nuanced, and I hope to provide insights on alternatives to assist in making informed decisions. The point I'm making, people ask me a lot, are you pro-medication or are you anti-medication? To be completely honest, I'm just pro-choice. And I think the choice needs to be well-informed. And most of the information we're getting is kind of from a singular source that leads you in the most common direction, which is the mainstream choice to take medication if you're suffering with ADHD or your child is. Why am I here? That's a good question. There's nobody here. It seems that in a lot of ways I'm wasting my time. I personally took ADHD medications when I was a young child up into the age of young adulthood in my early 20s. And it was a profoundly impactful experience that changed me forever, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about using medications. I mean, I did like them, but then I ultimately did not like them when I quit and I realized what I had done to my ability to focus. So I'm here to help parents and people who are on the fence or in the world of consideration for ADHD medications, mostly stimulant-based medications is what I'm going to talk about. And I'm here to be the person that my parents didn't meet, and hopefully that meeting can prevent someone from experiencing what I've experienced, because had I not taken medications, I certainly wouldn't be doing this. I might be doing something better, but here I am. Why are you here? Anybody here want to share why they came to this talk tonight? Okay? It's okay, just listen in the comments. Technical difficulty. I'm going to start right in with one of my favorite topics that I'm just going to brush on, because I think to get an understanding of the medications and where they fit into our world, we must understand how they came into our world. And let's dive right in. All right, the amphetamine. The amphetamine is one of many ADHD treatments, and like I said, I like to examine the history of how something comes to be to get a better understanding of why it's there. When you're taking something like a medication, and you might say, why do I care about the history? All I care about is I'm taking it and I'm feeling good. It's good to know the intention behind the chemical that you're relying upon. The amphetamine. Effects of amphetamine is a burst of energy, feeling alert, talkative, restless, excited, happiness, aggression, fast heart rate, fast breathing. It does modify physiological part of the body, high blood pressure, dry mouth, jaw clenching, and teeth grinding, sweating, dilated large pupils, loss of appetite, increased heart rate, and increased libido. But personally, I did experience all of these. I would kind of grind my jaw and things like that. And I like to look at these because basically this is just raw. In a raw sense, this is what you get when you take amphetamines, and you can pick and choose these for what you want. For example, if you want to take amphetamines to lose weight, well then we're focused here, and then all these effects become side effects. And if you want to take amphetamines, for their most popular use, ADHD, then you're going to go here to burst of energy, restless and excited, and you're going to get a lot of work done. So, and then if you want to take antidepressants and you're using amphetamines, then you go to the happiness. And then, a side effect is dry mouth. So there's, depending on which effect you're after, the others become side effects. Benefits of amphetamines. I know I like to stand here and talk about amphetamines being terrible, but they do have benefits. If they didn't have benefits, why would Why wouldn't people like them? Why wouldn't I like them if they didn't have some benefit? Obviously, they treat ADHD, they treat narcolepsy, they treat obesity, they treat depression. Now, I want to make a clear distinction. The treatments are not cures. And taking an amphetamine for any of these issues does not make the core issue go away. I'll use a really obscure metaphor. If your basement leaks a pipe, you have a pipe burst in your basement, it's flooding, and you have a sump pump, that sump pump is going to pump the flooding out of your house and keep things dry. It's going to work overtime. It's a machine. It's an artificial source of moving the water out. However, if you just rely on the sump pump, you're not fixing the leak. You get it? So how do I live with my brain and this world? It's not fixed with a pill. It's a lifelong endeavor of understanding the self. Some risks of amphetamine use and some beautiful formatting. Low-high blood pressure, Raynaud syndrome. You can not get blood flow to your fingers. You can have cold extremities. It's changing what your body is doing with its heart and with its blood. So that can occur. You can experience abdominal and gastrointestinal issues, not only from the medication itself, but also just from the fact that the medication will encourage a more anorexic lifestyle, at least in my case. There's a huge loss of appetite. So mentally, it changed my relationship with food, eating, and to be perfectly honest, it gave me a little bit of body dysmorphia. I liked being skinny. But anyways, acne, blurred vision, dried mouth, teeth grinding, nosebleed, sweating profusely. I did notice also on medication that my sweat stank a lot more. Nasal congestion. It can increase the likelihood of seizures. It can cause tics, faster deep breaths, especially those with lung conditions and difficulty urinating. In my case, I do remember that when I would go urinate often, there was like extra drips. It's like I didn't have complete bladder control, which is kind of embarrassing and strange bargaining chip to get a higher cognitive edge. Yeah, I experienced a lot of these. One that can't be measured really by science that I continually try to explain was personality changes. And that's different from everyone because everyone has a different personality. So that's why so often in this talk I'm saying in my case, in my case, in my case, and I don't want to generalize and say that what happens to me will happen to you, because I'm sure there are situations where somebody's personality is highly unfavorable and these medications help. Psychological effects. So this is kind of, when you take any substance, pretty much, especially ones that alter your thinking, your cognition, you are inviting in an occupant to yourself, and a consciousness. And the consciousness of amphetamine is very excited, enthusiastic, inquisitive, curious, creative, busy, energetic. But over time, you can experience grandiosity. I said, wow, I can work harder than everyone. I can think better. I can get more done. I have more energy. I don't need to sit down and eat. I'm good to go. I'm the man. And over time, what was sort of a subtle element of thinking like this became more evident and problematic, like a frog boiling in a pot of grandiose behavior. And who's to say that that's not over? I mean, who's the guy who's giving a presentation to nobody? Anyways, yeah, it changes in libido. It can go up, it can go down. And mood swings, I definitely experienced that. It's sort of a big part of ADHD. Growing when you're diagnosed with ADHD is understanding how to regulate your emotions. And taking the medication doesn't necessarily, I think, improve emotional regulation, but it just sort of puts aside the need to regulate emotions, because I found that in my case, which I'm saying over and over, that my emotions weren't important when I was on medication, because what was important was the task at hand. And to tap into emotions was to hurt the completion of the task at hand. So why would I allow myself to become emotional when I have something to do? But then at times, being emotional was the thing to do. And I would get really riled up about something if I was angry, or I would get euphorically manic almost if I was excited. These medications can produce some light mania. And at times, looking back at my experience, when I felt really good and really great, I was on these medications and excited about a project or an idea or just about life. In retrospect, I think I was experiencing some chemically induced, like, bipolar mania. History of amphetamines. This gentleman here is Gordon Alls. He invented or synthesized the amphetamine. This gentleman is Pandora of psychiatry as we know it. I think it's really interesting to study the amphetamine specifically because the amphetamine sort of opened the door for psychiatric medications as we know them. It started off as a treatment for asthma and was sold in these inhalers over the counter. Obviously, children were snuffing amphetamines, and now we look at this and we say, what was wrong with us? Why were we doing this? This is unsafe. And just wait another 80 years and see what else we look at. One of my favorite things about the history of these inhalers is that jazz musicians would crack them open and put the gauzy piece that had the amphetamine in it in their coffee, drink that, and they invented bebop jazz. Here's another ad. This was this in minutes: cheerfulness, mental alertness, optimism. This is just generally, they didn't really have all the best names for what they were doing, but it was basically slowly they were carving out the space in our culture for the antidepressant with these ads. They found that if these medications brought on feelings of well-being, then a feeling of bad being, whatever the opposite of well-being is, sadness, malaise, is a disease, and we have the treatment. Again, looking for all the effects of amphetamine, they gave it for weight control. Here is an ad where there's a man who is large and a man who is skinny. He says, you got to get it together. Take some amphetamines, buddy. World War II and its relationship with amphetamines, because the amphetamines were given to the Allied soldiers, and some would say they were an integral element of winning the war against the Germans, who were taking methamphetamine. But that's a whole other thing. But it's once again, the thing that's kind of funny about it is that they suggested that these pilots take amphetamines for pressure, because they increase your blood pressure. And they say, well, the pressurized cabin is a lot for these high-altitude bomber pilots, so they gave them that. But then they said, yeah, pressure is cool, but I can run a long mission. Let's do it. So as you can see, it's saying too many missions. Can't stay awake in the air. So they're using it for wakefulness and whatever else. Here we go is a very stylish ad for the central nervous stimulant of choice, Dexedrine, which I took as a child. And this is, it's saying the desired amelioration of mood can be achieved safely with Dexedrine. Dexedrine can be depended upon to restore mental alertness and zest for living, particularly important in the aged. So this ad is saying if you're an old person and you're starting to feel old in the way and tired, to take amphetamine. And I think it says a lot about where our culture began to head in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, where people were starting to feel depressed, starting to feel that they didn't go in. I think technology and industry as we know it has detached us from ourselves in a way that we feel are lost, confused, and broken. But that's a whole other issue. This would be pretty sexist. Now she can cook breakfast again. So you have a depressed wife who's not making you breakfast, and maybe she's depressed because you expect her to make you breakfast every morning. But get her on some amphetamines, she'll make breakfast, she'll clean the house. You know, a bored person at home who has nothing to do might start to feel sad that there's nothing to do. And I can tell you, as someone who used many amphetamines, that I could clean all day. And I'd be delighted to make breakfast for anybody on amphetamines. Just getting things done feels good. And it feeds into this restlessness to do things all the time. So this ad I think is interesting. I'm going to make sure my camera's working. Next. Now we come to something sort of contemporary. Already done with my homework, Dad. This is pretty on the nose. This is an ad that's geared toward parents. It says you have a kid who's not doing his homework, and that's a disease. And we have the cure. Adderall works fast to start a day with or without food, offers all-day ADHD symptom control, helps improve academic performance, and shares a 60-year legacy of safety and clinical experience. And this is where the amphetamine interacted in my life, which is a picture I have here that's not here. This picture was, I'll put it in post because nobody's here. And I'm pretty open about my process. I'm pretty out there with what goes on. I'm not guarded about, I need to do more research. I need to learn more. I'm very well versed in talking about my experience because, of course, we all know ourselves and we know what we've been through. So the experience of talking about studies, science, I got to tighten up. Let's see the next slide. Being diagnosed ADHD. So I was given the drugs when I was 7 after being diagnosed. And I was given the drugs because I did not raise my hand when I was supposed to. I was given the drugs because I got out of my seat and I was impulsive and I was talking about things off topic during class. I had all A's and B's. I was a great student. I was in the advanced groups. I was one of the younger people in my class from a late birthday. However, nonetheless, I was put on amphetamines promptly. And as a child, I felt depressed, outside. I was so young that I was unable to articulate to my mom. Let me just see something. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. I was unable to articulate to my mom that I wasn't feeling well, and I was unable to realize that the feelings were the medications. I just thought I was miserable. I hated the medication, and I wasn't really given options to not take it. I think one thing, if parents watch this video, one thing I would want you to take from it is listen to your kids. And remember that your kids are going to grow into adults. And they're going to remember how you talk to them. But I was thankful that my psychiatrist retired when I was 12 years old. And my mom then wanted to get another one, but I refused. And so I avoided taking amphetamines again until I was 15, and I started to perform poorly in school again because I did it on purpose. And that was stupid. There is an ADHD thing, and I do fit a lot of the ADHD traits. Something called counter will, where it's people with ADHD are stubborn, and they don't want to perform for you or because of you. So when someone is heavily involved with and concerned with my grades, it starts to feel like they're not my grades, that I'm doing it for you. That's a personality issue, or is ADHD, I don't know. But that rebellious attitude made the threat of medication present. I was to be assessed again. I was assessed again. The details are in my book, Hocus Focus, Coming of Age with ADD and Its Medicine. I was put back on Adderall, and I took it until I was 23. Anyways, symptoms of inattention to look for. These are the things that you would see in a child that would say maybe they have ADHD. Short attention span, careless mistakes, for example, forgetting to write their name or missing a punctuation mark. Don't do that. Appearing forgetful or losing things. This is something I still struggle with today. Being unable to stick to tasks that are tedious or time-consuming. So this is kind of grit, putting the nose to the grindstone, low dopamine reward. That's kind of where it comes from, is that these people with ADHD typically are looking for dopamine. They want to feel something. They want to be excited while they're working. So boring, quiet, menial tasks. The mind is going too fast. There's too many thoughts. There's desires. There's pleasure. And can't seem to just tone it all down to do something boring. But you can learn how. Appearing to be unable to listen or carry out instructions. Now, I think it's really curious that the word is appearing, because the way I see the ADHD attention span, where they're saying we have an attention deficit, that means you're not paying enough attention, you're missing something. When in reality, I think what's going on with the ADHD attention span is just a global attention span. Someone with ADHD is paying attention to everything at once and giving it equal value, and that's the problem. That what the person is saying gets enough attention as what shirt they're wearing. It gets enough attention as what is this other stuff written on the board? Oh, look at that chalk. What kind of chalk is that? Oh, I see that they missed a formatting mistake here. But they're not, so they're still seeing these things, but they're seeing everything else at once. And so the practice or the medication or the idea is to how can we tunnel vision ourselves into there. Constantly changing activity or task, looking for novelty, looking for something to excite them, to keep things going. Having difficulty organizing tasks. This is something that I struggle with as well. I find that being neat, being orderly and organized is not first nature, but that doesn't mean it can be second nature, third nature, or fourth nature. I've been spending years learning how to be organized, and I'm getting there. Perpetually, and I'm building. What's great about it is because I don't have a natural sense of it, I've built elaborate systems and ways of going about that I'm really conscious and aware of because it doesn't come natural. Symptoms of hyperactivity. You may have noticed the last one was inattentiveness, which is what I was personally diagnosed with. I wasn't a hyperactive student, I was inattentive. However, being able to sit still, especially in calm or quiet surroundings, wanting to move the body, being a kinetic person. Constantly fidgeting, touching, fingers. It's that need to feel, constant need to feel something, constant need to interact with the world. I think sometimes people with ADHD, they're not keen on just being observers. They want to reach out, touch, talk with. They don't see the world, they want to touch it. They want to be in it. Being unable to concentrate on tasks. These people are really keen to self-govern, to know what they want to do and why they want to do it. So concentrating on tasks that aren't in their vision, it's not very good sometimes. Excessive physical movement. Is this really a bad thing? People want to move. There's an element of classical education. You sit at a desk all day and stare at somebody in the format that I'm doing right now. Not everyone works that way. Part of my healing was getting a job in manual labor. And maybe being physical is something that there isn't enough of. And all the people who are, for lack of a better term, designed or equipped to be in physical jobs are being forced to be in academic positions. And it doesn't work with their constitution as a person. So they're required to make a chemical modification to their person in order to coexist with this expectation. Excessive talking. What's wrong with that? Being unable to wait their turn. You got to learn that eventually, but that is part of the expression of ADHD is sort of a excitement. So that comes. Acting without thinking. This is another quality, is impulse. And one place where acting without thinking is effective, desired, and helpful would be, for example, hunting. That if you are a hunter, you want to be... But in a classroom environment, before you raise your hand or attack, you must raise your hand. Be patient. Interrupting, no sense of danger. This is something that I definitely had too, is this excitement. And it might come back to that dopamine thing, that looking for excitement, thrills, adrenaline, what's going to happen, not thinking about consequences, only feeling how fun something is. Is such a desire to be in the present moment. And maybe not a desire, but just a lingering, just like in the moment. Right now, what is going on right now? And that becomes the main focus of thought, experience, and action. So what's happening now is fine. And if I'm not getting hurt or not there, then I'm not worried about the danger of my actions. So it's dangerous. I think it's important to recognize that ADHD can be a problem. And that problem does need to be addressed and to find solutions for. I just am here to say maybe let's try some other solutions before we introduce an amphetamine. It's like, bringing a dog in to get rid of a cat that was brought in to get rid of a mouse. Meds do manage these symptoms. All these things mostly will be managed with meds, and you'll see people who are taking meds and they say it's changed their life, it's the best. And that's why they were so dangerous, in my opinion. When I took those medications, when I was a teenager again, and they didn't make me sad, they made me awesome. I had this feeling that I was finally who I always tried to be. That in my head, often, I'd have a vision of how things would go, and then once I used my body to express whatever this vision is, I fumbled. I blundered. It didn't work. So when I first took Adderall and I went skateboarding, and I could do exactly what I thought about, I was like, wow. And the next day at school, when the teacher explained something to me and I got it, I was like, this is how a brain should work. So that's the desired outcome. That's why people take these. And it does create that. I'm not going to stand here and deny that it has some positive aspects because I'm trying to warn people or trying to promote avoiding it. It works. But just like Lord of the Rings, the movie I haven't read or seen or I don't know, but I'm aware enough of Lord of the Rings that that ring gives you power, but that power takes something from you. Potential causes, asterisks, of ADHD. Unknown. The science, from my understanding, and I'm preparing to go into a deep dive mode on the science of ADHD to produce my next book, Sailor's Guide to Unmedicated ADHD. But essentially, it's still a mystery. And something I think is important to point out, to pull back the history, I forgot the Controlled Substance Act, is when the Controlled Substance Act of 1970 passed, amphetamine was made Schedule II. And when it was made Schedule II, Prozac became the antidepressant of choice, and the companies that manufactured medications more or less went back to the drawing board to see where they should redistribute amphetamine, and they landed on funding, studying, and discovering ADHD. ADHD did not exist without the medication. At no point were researchers coming across ADHD saying, we need to find a cure for ADHD. They had the medication and they found that it made a certain kind of student, hyperkinetic minimal brain disorder. They had all kinds of weird names for these students, but they essentially found that this medication made those students more manageable in the classroom, and research was built around this situation. So the cause of ADHD is and forever is very controversial. There's some pointing to genetics, but we get into sort of what else do you inherit from your parents other than genetics? And what kind of environment are you in at home where you're predisposed? You may be predisposed to ADHD, but the environment that you're brought out in through trauma and stress may make you behave a certain way. And maybe a stress response for some people is to cry. Maybe a stress response for other people is to yell. Maybe a stress response for some people is to worry. And maybe a stress response for other people is to look for a distraction. Deficiencies. There is a number of things that you could be not eating enough of or eating too much of that we'll get into. Because your body is made of the things you put in it, both food, media, thoughts, air, water. And these have an effect, just like an amphetamine would have an effect. And sometimes when you're in fight or flight all the time, you don't know how to calm down, you don't know how to regulate, you can't get work done because you're always in survival mode. And this could develop into a chronic disorder of inattention, hyperactivity, ADHD. Potentially, developmental and behavioral issues. This is if you aren't meeting certain markers as a child and you're just younger than the rest of your class, developmentally, you have some catching up to do. This can create stress, frustration, and ADHD presentations. Behavioral issues. Here's some chemicals that exacerbate ADHD. And one study from Harvard that's referenced in this holistic article here does make the claim that by reducing the consumption of this stuff, you can reduce symptoms a third as much as stimulants. Food dyes, preservatives, excess sugar, unchecked gluten intolerances, and heavy metal. Nobody wants to eat that stuff, but it's everywhere, and it takes a lot of vigilance to avoid it. Consuming something that is only intended to present a color has the strange side effect of making you inattentive. And I ask you, who is it that eats a lot of food with food dye in it? Is it adults or children? A holistic approach. That's an alternative approach to ADHD. Holistic is meaning the whole, looking at the whole body. What else can you do other than just take a pill to manage this situation? You can get a dietitian, nutritionist, get an assessment on your diet, nutrition. Have that child looked at and seeing if they have any food allergies, if they have any deficiencies and what those are, and regulate them with supplements, foods, herbs, whatever recommendation they need. With Adderall, Ritalin, and all that, they just give them to you. If you are presenting these symptoms, whatever, a handful of these symptoms on this list, you get this medication. A holistic approach is more expensive, it's not covered by insurance, it's nuanced, it's tricky, it takes more work, it costs money, and like I said, insurance isn't going to pay for it. But we have a system in the United States of medication and insurance where they will give you for free with your insurance the shit that's being pushed by all the people who put money in Congress. So not taking ADHD medications is an act of political rebellion. Anyways, you can have your hormones assessed. This could be a hormonal issue, be it your thyroid, your endocrine system. I don't know. That's why I'm just saying check that out in that regard. You can, look at your microbiome. We are knowing more and more that the gut and the brain are connected. So what's going on in your stomach is connecting with what's going on in your brain. So getting both of those looked at. Just the more you can understand yourself and see what's wrong, the more you can fix it. If you just keep ignoring your problems and taking amphetamines instead of figuring it out, things aren't going to get fixed, and you're prolonging the inevitable of getting this together. Assess the environmental exposures. Do you have toxic mold in your house? Is there heavy metals in your water? These things matter, and they affect you in ways both large and small. Even being distractible, depression. It's profound how insidious toxins are in our world, and the strange way they affect us is not always physically. Assessment to identify underlying infections and inflammation. Assessment of the emotional, social, and spiritual context of an individual. Some of you might recoil at the thought of a spiritual context. However, a spiritual context is a relationship you have with being a self, with a higher power if you choose to address one, and what that is. And spiritual, by spiritual, it means the meaning of being a person. So when you lack meaning in yourself, you can't find meaning, you can't find purpose, you can't find motivation. It all can spiral out of control. It's just another thing in the holistic approach to pay attention to. And your emotion, how do you manage your emotions? And can you learn to manage your emotions better? I don't know. I'm working on it. Social. Do you have friends? These are kinds of things that can be assessed by a holistic professional. I myself, when I quit medications, did work with a holistic psychiatrist. I've interviewed 2 of them. You can find those videos on my channel. It's Dr. Lee and Kendra Campbell. These are people who take a holistic approach to psychiatry and help people get off meds and manage psychiatric disorders and psychiatric medication addictions or dependencies with other means. And those resources are out there. What about Ritalin? What about Ritalin? Ritalin is a methylphenidate, which means it's not an amphetamine. But it works really similarly. They both affect the central nervous system, and they're considered stimulants. But the reason that I used to think Adderall was a stimulant and Ritalin was not is because what Adderall does is it releases the neurotransmitters of norepinephrine and dopamine. So it takes it and just pushes it through your brain. So you're having an adrenaline response, you're having a dopamine response, so you're feeling good. You're getting more of these feel-good chemicals, you're getting a boost of them. Like I said, people with ADHD, they lack dopamine, they want to feel good. This medication covers that base for you, so your reward system is satisfied, so therefore you're not going to look for something to stimulate you. You already have that reward, so sitting down doing work feels good enough because you feel good synthetically. Ritalin works very similarly, but it's a dopamine and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. So that takes the stock of dopamine and norepinephrine that's already in you and regulates the speed with which your body processes it. So it gets a similar feeling, but it doesn't take you out of the element the way Adderall does. Psychiatric risks are the same. Psychosis, mania, delusions of grandeur, all that kind of stuff. It's, of course, I guess it's slower to get there, but Ritalin can take you there, and people suffer with Ritalin addiction similar to Adderall, but people don't do Ritalin for fun. I think that's an important distinction when looking at the 2 medications, is that people don't really abuse Ritalin the way they abuse Adderall because it doesn't increase those neurotransmitters, and taking more of it isn't going to intensify the way that taking more amphetamines does. So that makes it safer for abuse because you won't enjoy it as much. And we get addicted to things we enjoy. Dependence. These meds are addictive. Some people won't like the use of the word addictive. They associate addictive with negative habits. And they think, well, if my doctor's monitoring it, I'm doing what the doctor says, I'm not addicted, I'm just dependent. Sure. It's semantics. Nonetheless, when you take these medications for long enough, you cannot be yourself without them. So who are you at this point if you cannot be who you are without a substance? I would say you're an addict. But it's sort of a reversal when you're talking about the medical world because you're not addicted. You're in fact you have a sickness. And you're just treating your sickness. And people will sometimes, in conversations with me on the internet, say, that's like saying you can't take insulin, a diabetic shouldn't take insulin. And I say, no, it's not. That's a false equivalence. They're totally different. Because one of them is about your insulin production. And you will go into hypoglycemic shock and risk death without insulin. And nobody at college ever says, yo, man, can I get some of your insulin? I got a test. But the point I'm making is that it is diabetes is a very obvious, real disease. And I'm not saying that ADHD isn't real, but I do not believe it's a disease. I think it's a condition. And I think that the condition of ADHD can be managed through willpower, through watching your diet, through lifestyle, through habits, and through development of the self. Like I said, these meds are effective at making individuals productive at work and at school. They work. You want better grades? You'll probably get better grades on ADHD. You want that promotion? You'll probably work harder with those medications. but it comes at a cost. It's a Faustian deal. But what is a Faustian deal? Faustian deal is a deal with the devil. And when you deal with the devil, you want something. You want skills. You want fame. You want something in your heart of hearts. And you're being offered a quick opportunity, an easy opportunity to have that which you desired. But it always comes with a little caveat. And with ADHD medications, I don't think it's any different. I think they are a true Faustian deal. I think what you do get is you do get to be more effective at work. You do get to have your student be better. Your child might be better, but there's going to be something. And this can't be measured by science, but something's got to give in order for you to get this. In my case, that was my personality. I think I should have been taller. I couldn't perform without it. And here I am on a beautiful evening in a dark room talking to a camera. So that's my punishment. The longer one relies on them, the more they need them. The longer you take a drug, the harder the withdrawal is incredibly difficult. And one of the most challenging parts of the withdrawal is the idea that what I'm experiencing in the withdrawal is my ADHD. It's back. I took these medications. I didn't have ADHD. It was awesome. And now I've stopped taking the medication, and obviously my ADHD is back. But it's very difficult to differentiate what is my ADHD and what is the withdrawal from these medications, because they come at the same time. And I think a lot of what we say is ADHD is actually the withdrawal occurring. And Lord, that withdrawal takes years. It can take years. There's support groups online of people quitting these drugs, and it takes a long time. Parenting. Comes down to his parenting. When I quit the medications, I confronted my parents with resentment. I was mad at them that they didn't listen to me. I was mad at them that they made that choice on my behalf, and it f***ed me up. I was mad at my parents. And when I hear people online, a lot of these young adults who consider themselves late diagnosed, they talk about confronting their parents and saying, "Why didn't you medicate me earlier? This is awesome. I'm doing great. I wouldn't have struggled so much had you just medicated me. Why were you so crunchy?" So, as parents, you can't win sometimes as parents. You do the best you can. You make your choices. Your kid might resent you. Hopefully, they learn to forgive you as they grow. You just have to make these choices to the best of your knowledge, your intuition. No one knows your child like you know your child. But you may not know about drugs and ADHD, but you know your child. So you make that choice on your own. And there will be people like me and doctors who will tell you to consider this or consider that. But ultimately, it's your choice, especially when it comes to yourself, if you want to take these medications or not. My personal opinion is that I believe children shouldn't take these medications. I believe that pancakes. When you're cooking a pancake, you take the batter, you put it in the pan, the bottom of the pancake hardens, and then that allows you to put the spatula underneath the pancake, flip that flapjack, and then cook the other side, and then it hardens too. And then you take that sealed pancake over to your plate, and you pour syrup on it. And the syrup drizzles over the pancake, and it's delicious. I believe, this is just a metaphor, that pancake is in development when it's in the pan. And a child's brain is in the pan. You cook one side, and then you cook the other, and then it's done. Sorry, I touched the microphone. But if you poured syrup, if you put that batter in there and the bottom part hardens, and then you pour syrup on top of that pancake, and you flip that pancake, you're going to have kind of a weird breakfast. It's still going to be food. It's still probably going to be tasty. It's going to leave some crap on your pan, and it might be weird. I'll have to try this experiment of making this syrupy pancake. Is that perhaps we should let a brain and a person fully develop before we introduce stimulants. Stimulants in the forms of amphetamine were a part of my upbringing, were a part of my development. I cannot measure what elements of my personality, my thinking, the positive aspects of being me and the negative aspects of being me are connected with ADHD medication. But I can know for sure that I'll never know. This is just a note I wanted to make about media and attention. When I was a child, I was allowed to watch TV before school, and I was allowed to watch TV before bed. I was allowed to watch a lot of TV, and I did. And it stimulated me, it gave me that dopamine that I wanted. But I think also from my own personal experiments with my phone and with reading and with being bored on purpose for a reason, I have found that there's something I call like attention priming. And that's in the morning, if I open my phone and I look at about 100 memes before breakfast, I'm going to be expecting that kind of rapid fire dopamine. I'm going to look for a podcast. I'm going to look for something to keep me stimulated all day long because I've already primed my brain first thing in the morning to receiving that. I think that you're creating slots in your attention saying, boom, 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 I can handle this many things, this fast, this many things, this fast. And by doing that, the expectation of your work or school may not match that. So it's a problem. So perhaps managing slower things for someone with ADHD. I do a lot of reading. And when I can, I try to just sit there. I try to drive without music. This is a challenge I give myself to try to develop a weakness in me that's my ADHD, and I try to consciously strengthen it through all sorts of avenues, one of which is silence and reading instead of looking at my phone. More on diet. It has an effect. Gut-brain connection, we talked about it. One thing you can do if your kid has ADHD or if you suffer with ADHD is experiment with yourself and try eliminating dairy, wheat, corn, soy, eggs, nuts, and citrus. You can do it one at a time, all at once, and reintroduce them one at a time. Look into this. It's something you can see and be really cognizant of how eliminating foods, how you feel. And that can better inform you to make those choices. Maybe not always have pizza, but have it on occasion and be aware of how it's going to change your cognition, because that's going on. ADHD encouraged diet is a protein-rich diet. Your brain, your body, it all needs food, man. Supplements and herbs. It's not like taking Adderall. I can't just say take an Adderall. It's very specific, very nuanced, and very personal. But there are avenues to go down. There are specialists to hire. There are books to read. There are other YouTube videos to watch where you can learn about supplementation and herbal remedies for ADHD that you can try. And I will tell you this, none of it is going to work the way Adderall does. That's the sad truth, man. None of this stuff I've done has brought me to that level, that high I felt on Adderall. I do all this stuff to manage the low I felt off of it. Seriously. It might not be what you want to hear, but taking Adderall, I think, is an abuse of your body, and it pushes you harder than you should go. I think it ages you faster. I think you're squeezing too much out of yourself when you take a medication like this. I think you're trying to live 2 days and 24 hours, and I think that ages you. I think it wears you out. I think it pushes your cardiovascular system. It pushes your respiratory system. It pushes your nervous system to the limit. So none of this stuff is going to get you to that level where you're going to be that effective, but you can get better. And I think that's why I encourage people, if you're in the choice to take meds, just don't get started, because it's such a task to get off. And the worst part about getting off the medications is you have to do it without the medication. While I was on the medication, all the things I had to do to get better, I said, I know I can knock this out with the medication. And then you're left with this, in your head, this expectations of your own productivity that you can't seem to achieve. And that's a real bummer. And it can create an identity crisis. It can create a self-loathing crisis. It can create a lot of confusion being one person on something and being another person off something. So that's why if you think that you'd end up in that situation, maybe just get started and figure out how to manage your ADHD. Because once you get a taste of that power, man, it's hard to turn away. There's some lifestyle things you can do for ADHD. Exercise. Numero uno. Like I said, nothing gets me feeling like I did on Adderall, but no Adderall gets me feeling like I do when I'm in my body with exercise. You want that dopamine, you want that serotonin, you want that norepinephrine. Get your body in motion, push it harder than you can. It feels good. And you're stronger, it gets things going. I find that it's interesting that if I have a lot of thoughts in my head and I seem confused and I overwhelmed and ADHD, and I do some vigorous exercise, afterwards I'm calm, relaxed, patient, and ready to take on work one thing at a time. Which is why I do physical work, and which is why I encourage kids to do physical work. Get out there and stack bricks or something. Using the brain and the body at the same time is something we don't do enough as a people. And building things, making things, fixing things, digging holes, all that stuff, it's an opportunity to use your mind and your body together. And using your body for more than just a container for your brain. But also relax, get your sleep. We all know, these are one of these things where it's like, if you know that if you do this, things are going to be better. But it's the willpower. That's the challenge. So I think that's the thing to focus on. How can I have better control of my willpower and self-control? I don't know. That's a personal thing. But I struggle with that. I like to stay up late. But I know that when I go to bed at a reasonable hour and get up at a reasonable hour, I'm going to have a better day. And having a better day might mean, for me, my ADHD is managed. But I don't think of it that way. I don't think of myself as disabled. I don't think of myself as super ADHD. I just think of myself as living life. There are challenges, and I do my best to handle them. Drink water. Who doesn't want to do that? Be mindful. Be aware. Be self-aware. See who you are and how you're feeling, and try to talk to yourself in a way that's productive. And managed media. I already talked about managing your media relationship and diet. All right. Brings us to this, sailing. There's something about the idea of sailing that seems like it's freedom, liberating, connected with nature, and a representation of humankind's ability to see nature, reach out, touch it, and create something really cool out of it, which is a sailboat that we've, just by rearranging materials and putting them out in the ocean, you can go. Why am I talking about sailing? When you, let's say that, let's use another metaphor, and let's say that being a person in the world is being a vessel on the ocean of time and existence, that each of us are boats, and we all are on the same ocean in different areas. Some waters are choppier, some waters are easy, some winds are high, some places it rains, and this is always changing. We're always on the ocean. And all of our boats are different too. We're equipped with different crew, different people around us. We have different conditions. Some people have nicer boats, some people have crappier boats, some people are towed by others. This metaphor can get pretty clustered, but the point I want to get at is taking medications is a motor. It's a synthetic product that requires commerce to receive. Yeah, someone has to pay for it, be it your insurance company or out of pocket. There's a large company that extracts resources and distributes them en masse to the public on a boat in the form of diesel fuel or gasoline, and your body in the form of amphetamines or methylphenidates or whatever other medications you're taking for whatever other condition. And when you flip that motor on, it just goes. It doesn't matter if it's raining. It doesn't matter if it's windy. It doesn't matter if it's still. It just goes. It doesn't matter what direction nature is telling you to go. You can cut it and just go. You, as an operator, know to steer the ship on this motor. It can go. And if all of a sudden that motor is gone, if your prescription can't be fulfilled, if there's a shortage, or if you just say, you know what, I'd like to know how to sail, then when you turn that motor off, the longer you've been running that motor, the less you know about sailing. And the harder it's going to be to hoist those old sails and to replace those rotten lines. Things are going to be different. But when you know how to sail, you know that you're the one moving the ship. You know, and you're able to listen to where the wind wants you to go. You're able to be aware of how this all works. You're able to take ownership of your own movement across the ocean. I think it's pretty obvious the point I'm making here is that while it's not as effective, you won't cover as much ground, you can't guarantee as much momentum as you can with a motor on a sailboat, that there's something pure, there's something true, and there's something honorable about choosing to take the hard road at things. There's more resistance, but it will make you a more qualified sailor. It'll make you someone who has a better relationship with their vessel, with the ocean, and with the wind. And the point I'm making is it's harder, but I think it's worth it. There are some days still where I wish I had a motor on my boat, but nonetheless, I'm choosing to sail, and for some reason, I'm choosing to talk about this publicly and stuff like that. And I hope that this has been helpful. I still have a lot to learn. I'm changing gears from telling my story the best I can to telling the story of all of us and telling the story of healing and coming to terms with maybe medications are okay for some people, but I still want to be there as a resource for people to have this dialogue and have this discussion. Look at me fidgeting, and hopefully that can provide some value. Does anyone have any questions? Leave them in the comments. Hippocrates, father of modern medicine as we know it. He considered something like ADHD can be considered fire over water. And this is a reference to the humor system. There's 4 elements that manage the body, and any imbalance of these 4 humors, as they were called, was a disease. And health meant balance of all 4. So fire over water meant that there's too much fire in this energetic person, this behavior that is similar to what we would call ADHD. And his recommendation for fire over water was fish, eat fish, which coincidentally is packed full of omegas that are better, that do help ADHD. Fish oil is a consideration. Water, drink lots of water to cool down the fire, and exercise. Get that movement out. And I think to take something that's complex and large and sort of reduce it to its origin is a beautiful thing. So this kind of behavior has been around since the time of Hippocrates, and these kinds of remedies have been around since then too. But as we know it, amphetamines and such have only been around for about 90 years. So we're still figuring it out, and we'll see how the future goes with that. And I hope that my testimony and my standing around here acting goofy is valuable to somebody on the internet. Nobody came here, and I was prepared for that, so it didn't really hurt my feelings. But it does give me pause about if I'm doing the right thing or not. So that's for me to assess. But if this video did help you, let me know. If you think I'm totally wrong and I need to stop talking, let me know. If you have something you want to add, let me know in the comments. And I wrote a book. I spent 10 years on it. And it's there, and it's really something. Check that out. Yeah.